If you were to ask me what is the series that had the most impact on me in terms of fantasy or even writing, it would be Lord of the Rings.
What a twist!
If you were to ask me the second most influential series, it would actually be The Legend of Zelda. Weirdly enough, I got into both around the same time, 2003 to be specific. Return of the King was coming to theaters, and well, my dad and I watched both extended editions of Fellowship and Two Towers, and then went with him to go see it in theaters, and then I played Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition since that came out around that time. Regardless, that was the year that really got me into the fantasy genre and showed me the magical worlds that you can make with that setting. And of course, eventually finding Dungeons and Dragons and realizing I can almost pay homage to my love of these settings with this game or a plethora of other RPGs out there. So maybe you're in the same boat. You want to take The Legend of Zelda and pay homage and write a campaign that's a love letter to a series that's meant a lot to you or one that you personally love. Well, including Winds of Calamity, I've run about 3 different Zelda-themed D&D campaigns. And, well, the first one I ever played in as a player was also themed after The Legend of Zelda. Go figure. So if you're looking to run a Zelda D&D campaign, here are some tips and tricks that I've personally learned along the way, and maybe they can help you in some capacity. The thing here is I tried to also make this as basically universal as possible. So if you're not even looking to run a Zelda D&D campaign and just run a campaign in general, I'm hoping you'll still be able to get something out of this. The first thing you're going to have to figure out is how close are you going to be to the source material? Truthfully, this can be applied to basically any game based on an existing IP. Is it going to be more inspired by it, where you're maybe not even in the same setting, but you're going for the same tone and atmosphere of that campaign? Or perhaps you're going full-blown, where you're in the world, you're playing the various ancestors that exist, and you come across the various items and artifacts and things that exist within that world, and even that world's history. Perhaps it's an alternate timeline. Who knows? In Zelda, you can get away with doing alternate timeline because, well, the Zelda timeline is a, yeah, have fun with it. But here's the bright side. If you don't really even stick closely to the material and just say it's inspired by Zelda, so which meaning you're going for the various tones and themes that exist from the franchise, it can paint a picture for your players. So it may not exist in the world of Hyrule, but you're going for that kind of atmosphere and theming of where it's going to be a bunch of dungeon crawling and puzzle solving. Players will get a decent idea. So even as an elevator pitch, it's pretty good. The second one is kind of related to the first one, deciding on your villain. Are you going to pull straight from the series, or are you going to more be inspired by one, potentially even invent your own? Because the thing is, The Legend of Zelda has plenty of villains to pull from outside of Ganon. You have General Onyx, Viren, Chancellor Cole, Majora's Mask, Zant, Vati, and the list can probably go on. I'm sure I missed a few, and in fact, if I did miss a few, go and label them down below. Girahim, that's one! How can I miss Girahim? Also, if you wanted to, you could go full-blown Link's Awakening and not have there really be a villain to speak of. Rather, the villain is more so the goal that the party is going against. They're trapped somewhere and they need to escape. For a more short-form campaign, this could work out really well and potentially be very interesting, because the party may not have to wrestle with an exact outside force, but more wrestle with each other or potentially themselves. There's a lot that you could potentially dive into that Link's Awakening couldn't due to the hardware at the time. If you had to ask me, I still think Link's Awakening is one of the best stories in the Zelda franchise. Not the best, but certainly one of. And then the third point is, decide what game you're primarily going to pull from in terms of inspiration. This can be from where your game is set. For instance, you want to set it after Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, or maybe you want to set it after Twilight Princess. Perhaps maybe just before Twilight Princess, and maybe even try to prevent the rise of Zant. Honestly, a campaign where you're trying to potentially prevent the rise of Zant actually sounds kind of interesting, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, figuring out where your campaign is going to be set, if it's going to be directly in the world of Zelda, will help with your pitch, as well as even planning everything out and potentially even settling on your villain. It could lead to a very interesting exploration and potentially an alternate timeline situation, again, as is pretty common and easy to get away with in The Legend of Zelda. And then from there, it's figuring out your tone and your structure. Luckily, pretty much every Zelda game has a very similar structure to it. Usually there's going to be a dungeon, you're going to find a key item within the dungeon that will usually help defeat the boss, and then what you get at the end of the dungeon will help progress the story in some capacity. You can use this honestly in your own D&D campaigns to begin with. It's really easy to follow. Again, it can potentially create a more linear type campaign, but if you're going for more dungeon delving type style campaigns, this is not a bad model to follow. And honestly, it's just even a good one to pull from. Then there's also the tone. Zelda is a series that tends to lean toward being more family friendly. Again, they do get dark. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, Tears of the Kingdom, and many others do get really dark. But also there are moments of levity within those very serious games. Zelda is a series that really doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not afraid to have goofy moments in order to help bring up the comedy because, well, that's also kind of how Nintendo works. They love their random slapstick and comedy, but that's also kind of the charm of the Zelda franchise. So keep that in mind. Is your tone going to be exactly like Zelda, or is it going to be something a bit more different because you want to explore a different element of the franchise? Winds of Calamity, for instance, tends to lean more toward family friendly because I wanted to stick as close as possible to the franchise that I really love. But we do have really dark moments within the campaign, especially the Twilight arc, because that got dark. And then from there, if you answered all the questions, you'll know how much you're going to have to homebrew. If you're going full-fledged into the world of Zelda, you can potentially homebrew absolutely everything to make it all work, or you could just take existing races and then just maybe reflavor them, adjust some of the abilities to make things work accordingly. And yes, answer the question of what system you're going to be running is going to help answer the question of how closely you're sticking with the series. If you're going to be running something like D&D or Pathfinder like I have in the past, then you're probably going to do a bit of hand waving according to some of the magic that exists within the setting. Magic is very much a thing in the Legend of Zelda franchise, but typically comes more through magic items and not so much through the things that people cast. Casters do exist, but they are exceptionally rare within the setting. So that is something you're probably going to have to do a bit of hand waving, or just say we're using D&D because we all know it and we love it, and we just want to use that to reflect a system that we love. Truthfully, whatever helps your table have the most fun is perfectly fine. In fact, there's even a Ghibli/Legend of Zelda Kickstarter that ended a little while ago that hopefully is coming out sometime soon. So who knows, maybe running a Zelda-inspired D&D campaign is going to be much easier here in the near future. But there's also a fan-made project out there called Reclaim the Wild that is completely a fan-made Zelda RPG system. Links will be in the description because YouTube is getting very weird with links in the comments, so sorry I had to put a little extra work into it. Then there's just other RPGs in general, like Fantasy Age, Savage World, or even Powered by the Apocalypse. In fact, Critical Role, for their Zelda one-shot, used Powered by the Apocalypse, and truthfully, it was really well done. It felt like Zelda. It felt accurate to the world. And honestly, what the CR crew did for the Zelda one-shot is just incredible. It felt exactly like being in the world of Zelda, and it helped that it was also a sponsored stream, so they could get away with using some assets. But truthfully, even then, for your home games, you can use those bits too. And Powered by the Apocalypse is probably one of the stronger systems to use to really reflect the world of Zelda. However, as mentioned, if your table prefers games like Pathfinder or D&D and you want to use that to bring the world that you love to life, you absolutely can. Just be aware you will have to potentially do a lot more homebrew to bring a lot of the ancestries and also items to life. Luckily with D&D, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything does have a guide to help make custom lineages. And honestly, at the end of the day, run a Zelda D&D campaign that makes sense for you and your table, however that looks. If it's a really obscure RPG system or one that everyone knows, as long as you and your table is having a great time, that's what matters. And well, that'll do it for the final video of this year, folks. It has been a wild ride and just a crazy year, a tiring year for a lot of reasons, and well, a fantastic year for just as many others. I can't express my appreciation for you all enough. You all are absolutely amazing, and I love making these videos for you all. While I'm going to be taking a bit of a holiday break, I'll still release shorts here and there, but there really won't be that many videos or live streams during the break. But regardless, I'm looking forward to what next year has in store for us all. It's going to be an amazing year for gaming, I have a feeling. And also, looking forward to a much needed break. So with that, everyone, thank you all so much for watching. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Keep rolling those dice.